The birth of the NFL Draft, 1936. The NFL Draft, as we know it today, traces its roots back to 1935 when Philadelphia Eagles co-owner and future NFL Commissioner Bert Bell proposed a groundbreaking idea. At the time, the NFL was dominated by a handful of prestigious teams like the Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers, and New York Giants, all of which signed the top college talent. The smaller franchises, struggling to compete, needed a level playing field. Bell's solution, a draft that would give every team the opportunity to secure top talent, regardless of their previous season's performance. On February 8th, 1936, at a Philadelphia Ritz-Carlton, the NFL held its first draft. It was a 9-round event where the order of picks was based on the reverse standings from the previous season. In those early years, no scouting combines, no pro days. Teams made selections based on newspaper clippings and word of mouth. The Eagles, holding the first overall pick, chose Jay Berwanger, the first ever Heisman Trophy winner, though he famously never played a down in the NFL and instead pursued a career selling foam rubber. A strange start to what would become one of the most iconic events in sports. Draft evolution, from lottery to strategy, 1940s to 1960s. The draft took on new significance as the years went on, especially during the 1940s and 1950s. In 1946, the emergence of the rival All-America Football Conference, AAFC, forced the NFL to adapt. Teams now had to fight for talent, which led to the introduction of the bonus pick, where the first overall pick wasn't determined by the worst team in the league, but by a lottery system. This change would later allow the Philadelphia Eagles to select future Hall of Fame linebacker Chuck Bednarik with the top pick in the 1949 draft. The competition for players heated up even more when the NFL merged with the AFL in 1970. During this time, the NFL introduced the concept of computerized scouting, pioneered by the Dallas Cowboys under general manager Tex Schramm. This gave them a strategic edge, helping them draft a staggering 6 future Hall of Famers in the 1960s alone, including Roger Staubach, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. The draft becomes a television event, 1980s to 1990s. The 1980s saw the NFL draft shift from a closed-door, business-like function to an event that could be broadcast to millions of fans. ESPN, a network that had just launched, approached NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle in 1980 to air the draft. Initially, Rozelle was skeptical. Who would watch the draft? But once the event was televised in 1980, its popularity skyrocketed. The 1983 NFL Draft, often cited as the greatest draft class of all time, showcased the immense talent available to teams. With future legends like John Elway, Dan Marino, and Jim Kelly all selected in the first round, fans became increasingly invested in the draft process. The first overall pick went to the Baltimore Colts, who chose quarterback John Elway, despite his reluctance to play for the team. Elway's drama-filled saga would later inspire one of the most iconic trade moments in draft history, when the Colts traded him to the Denver Broncos, where he would become a Hall of Fame quarterback. By the late 1980s, the draft had become a marquee event, transitioning to a weekend slot that allowed for even more media coverage and fan interaction. In 1989, 4 future Hall of Famers were taken in the first 5 picks, including Barry Sanders and Troy Aikman. This draft set the stage for an era where the draft would no longer be just a formality, but a spectacle full of drama, trades, and surprises. The rise of trades and the importance of draft picks, 2000s to present. As the draft evolved into a primetime event, teams began to realize the value of securing high draft picks to build their future. The 2000s saw a massive uptick in trade activity, with teams increasingly willing to move up or down the draft board to secure the players they wanted. One of the most infamous trades in draft history occurred in 2001, when the New Orleans Saints head coach Mike Ditka traded every single one of the team's draft picks. first, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round selections for the rights to Texas running back Ricky Williams. This bold move backfired spectacularly, as Williams' career was not as successful as the Saints had hoped, and the trade is still remembered as one of the most questionable in NFL history. The early 2000s were also marked by other memorable trades. In 2004, the San Diego Chargers traded the first overall pick, which they had used to select Eli Manning, to the New York Giants in exchange for the Giants draft picks. This set the stage for one of the most heated rivalries in NFL history, as Manning would go on to win 2 Super Bowl titles with the Giants, while the Chargers selected Philip Rivers, who became their franchise quarterback for over a decade. The draft also became a way for teams to shake up the league, as we saw in 2011 when the Atlanta Falcons traded 5 draft picks to move up and select Julio Jones, a wide receiver who would go on to become one of the greatest to ever play the position. Similarly, in 2016, the Los Angeles Rams traded away a large portion of their future for the right to select quarterback Jared Goff, while the Philadelphia Eagles did the same to secure Carson Wentz. The most notable draft moments. While the NFL draft has had its fair share of surprises, it's also produced some unforgettable moments. For example, in the 1989 draft, one of the most iconic and well-documented stories was the selection of 4 Hall of Famers in the first 5 picks, with Barry Sanders leading the way. This draft became the gold standard for how much talent could be packed into one round, with players like Sanders and future legends like Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders, and Derek Thomas. Another dramatic moment came in 2004 when Eli Manning famously refused to play for the San Diego Chargers, leading to one of the most controversial draft day trades in recent memory. Manning was eventually traded to the New York Giants, where he would go on to win 2 Super Bowls, while the Chargers selected Philip Rivers, who would also have an illustrious career. The 2000s also brought with it memorable stories of underdog players who were picked in later rounds but went on to become stars. Richard Sherman, Kevin Green, Antonio Brown, and even Tom Brady, who was famously drafted in the 6th round, proved that diamonds can sometimes be found in the rough. The draft in the modern era. In recent years, the draft has only continued to grow in significance, becoming more of a cultural event than ever before. Teams now rely heavily on analytics, scouting reports, and data to make their picks, and the arrival of virtual reality and interactive fan engagement has made it even more of a spectacle, with new media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube providing live updates and commentary. Fans feel more connected to the draft process than ever before. One of the most exciting trends in recent drafts has been the rise of the quarterback carousel. Teams have increasingly been willing to trade up for quarterbacks, recognizing the value they bring to a franchise. In 2017, the Kansas City Chiefs traded up to select Patrick Mahomes, who would go on to become one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in NFL history. In the same draft, the Chicago Bears made a similar move for Mitch Trubisky, a decision that has had much more mixed results.